June 12, 1944, Normandy, France, 6 days after D-Day. Sergeant William Bill Underhill of the 51st Highland Division presses his cheek against the stock of his Lee-Enfield No. 4 MKIT sniper rifle. Through his No. 32 telescopic sight, he tracks a German NCO coordinating machine gun positions 400 yards across a hedgerow-lined field near Tilly-sur-Seulles. His finger finds the trigger. He begins the squeeze. The shot breaks unexpectedly. The bullet strikes 2 feet left of target. Underhill curses under his breath. It's the 3rd miss this morning. Not because of wind, not because of range estimation, because of the trigger itself, a military specification component with 5.5 pounds of creep, stacking, and over-travel that makes precision shooting a gamble rather than a science. Across the killing fields of Normandy, British and Canadian snipers are facing a brutal reality. Their German counterparts, equipped with Kar98k rifles fitted with precision single-stage triggers, are achieving first-shot hits at ranges where Commonwealth snipers need 2 or 3 attempts. The statistics are damning. German snipers average 1.3 shots per kill. British snipers average 2.8 shots per kill. In sniper warfare, that second shot is often fatal, not to the enemy, but to you. Muzzle flash gives away your position. The enemy's friends start shooting back. By mid-June 1944, the casualty reports tell the story. British sniper teams are suffering 40% higher casualties than their German counterparts in comparable engagements. Every missed first shot is a death sentence waiting to happen. What Sergeant Underhill doesn't know, what none of them know, is that 200 miles away in a basement workshop in Portsmouth, a 52-year-old civilian gunsmith with no military credentials and no engineering degree is about to solve their problem with a modification so simple, so effective, and so completely unauthorized that it will be banned by 3 different military review boards before a maverick colonel forces it into production. His name was Harold "Harry" Bowman, and his forbidden trigger modification would change sniper warfare forever. The Lee-Enfield rifle had served the British Empire since 1895. By World War II, it was legendary for its smooth bolt action and 10-round magazine capacity, double that of the German Kar98k. British soldiers could fire 30 aim shots per minute with proper training. The Lee-Enfield was fast, reliable, and robust, but it was never designed for precision shooting. The standard Lee-Enfield trigger was a military compromise, built for reliability in mud, sand, and Arctic cold. The trigger pull weight varied between 5 and 7 pounds depending on manufacturing tolerances. Worse, it featured what gunsmiths call a 2-stage military pull with substantial creep. That gritty, grinding sensation as the trigger moves rearward before the sear finally releases. For rapid fire at 200 yards, this was acceptable. For precision shooting at 600 yards, it was catastrophic. When the British Army began converting Lee-Enfields into dedicated sniper rifles in 1942, they added telescopic sights and selected rifles with superior barrel accuracy. But they left the triggers completely standard. The reasoning was simple. Trigger modifications might compromise reliability. In combat, a rifle that fires every time is better than a rifle that shoots accurately sometimes. The small arms school at Hythe had tried to address the problem. In 1943, armorers experimented with reducing trigger pull weights by weakening springs and polishing sear surfaces. The results were disastrous. Lighter triggers meant more misfires in cold weather. Polished sears meant rifles occasionally fired when the bolt was closed sharply, a terrifying malfunction called slam firing that killed 2 soldiers during testing. Lieutenant Colonel N.A.D. Armstrong, chief instructor at Hythe, issued a directive in August 1943 that became doctrine. No modifications to trigger assemblies are authorized. The standard Lee-Enfield trigger mechanism represents the optimal balance between reliability and accuracy for military service. The expert consensus was clear. The trigger couldn't be improved without compromising safety. British snipers would simply have to adapt their technique, but technique couldn't overcome physics. In Normandy's hedgerows, where German snipers with Kar98ks equipped with precision triggers were achieving first-shot hits at 500 yards, British snipers were dying. The after-action reports from June 1944 documented 73 British sniper casualties in the first 2 weeks of the campaign. German sniper casualties in the same sector, 31. The stakes were measured in lives. Every day the problem remained unsolved, more British snipers died. And the official position remained unchanged. Nothing could be done. They were wrong. Harold Bowman was not a military man. He had never served in the armed forces. He held no engineering degree from Cambridge or the Royal Technical College. His credentials consisted of 34 years running a small gunsmith shop on Queen Street in Portsmouth, repairing shotguns for farmers and adjusting triggers on target rifles for competitive shooters. What Bowman understood, what the military experts didn't, was that trigger design was not a binary choice between reliability and precision. It was a problem of geometry and leverage. Bowman's insight came in May 1944 while repairing a pre-war target rifle for a local shooting club. The rifle featured a two-stage trigger similar to the Lee-Enfield's military trigger, but with a crucial difference: an adjustable screw that changed the engagement angle between the trigger and sear. By altering this single geometric relationship, the trigger could break cleanly at 2 pounds while maintaining full engagement for reliability. Bowman stared at the mechanism for a long moment. Then he walked to his workshop's back room where he kept his own Lee-Enfield, a rifle he'd purchased surplus in 1938. He spent the next 6 hours taking detailed measurements of the trigger assembly. The standard Lee-Enfield trigger used a simple hook and notch design. The trigger lever engaged the sear at a shallow angle, roughly 35 degrees. This shallow angle meant the trigger had to travel a significant distance before the sear released, creating the characteristic creep and heavy pull. But if the engagement angle could be increased to 60 degrees, the trigger would release with minimal travel and reduced pull weight while maintaining full sear engagement for safety. The modification would require machining a new notch in the trigger lever and adding a small adjustment screw. Total parts cost, 3 shillings. Total modification time, 45 minutes per rifle. On May 23, 1944, Bowman modified his own Lee-Enfield's trigger. He took it to a local shooting range the next morning. At 100 yards, his group size, the spread of 5 consecutive shots, measured 0.8 inches. With the standard trigger, his typical group size was 2.3 inches. He had just improved Lee-Enfield accuracy by 65% with a modification that cost less than a pint of beer. Bowman wrote a detailed letter to the War Office that same day, including technical drawings and test results. He received a form letter response 3 weeks later, thanking him for his patriotic interest and informing him that all matters relating to service rifle modifications are handled by qualified military armorers. The letter was signed by a clerk. Nobody with technical knowledge had read his proposal. Harold Bowman was not a man who accepted bureaucratic rejection easily. On June 15, 1944, 9 days after D-Day, he read a newspaper article about British sniper casualties in Normandy. The article mentioned the 51st Highland Division by name. Bowman knew that division trained at a camp near Aldershot, just 45 miles from Portsmouth. He closed his shop the next morning, loaded 5 modified Lee-Enfield triggers into his car, and drove to Aldershot. The guard at the camp gate was not impressed by a 52-year-old civilian gunsmith requesting to speak with the division's chief sniper instructor. But Bowman was persistent. He waited 4 hours. Finally, a young lieutenant named James Fraser agreed to see him, mostly to get rid of him. Fraser was skeptical. "Mr. Bowman, the trigger mechanism of the Lee-Enfield has been evaluated by the finest military armorers in Britain. If there was a simple modification that improved accuracy, don't you think they would have found it?" Bowman opened his case. "Lieutenant, I've brought 5 modified triggers. Give me 1 rifle and 10 minutes on your range. If I can't prove this works, I'll leave and never bother you again." Fraser agreed, mostly out of curiosity. 10 minutes later, Fraser was staring at a target. Bowman had fired 5 shots at 200 yards. The C group measured 1.1 inches. Fraser had never seen a Lee-Enfield shoot that accurately with military ammunition. "How much does it cost?" Fraser asked. 3 shillings per rifle. 45 minutes of work." Fraser's expression changed from curiosity to concern. "Mr. Bowman, this is impressive. But you need to understand something. Modifying service rifles without War Office authorization is explicitly forbidden under military regulations. If I install these triggers and a rifle malfunctions, I could face court-martial. Have you tested for malfunctions?" "In my workshop, yes. 500 dry fires, no failures. But that's not official testing." Fraser shook his head. "I'm sorry. I can't authorize this. You need to go through proper channels." But that evening, Fraser mentioned the demonstration to his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Robert "Mad Bob" Campbell of the 7th Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Campbell had earned his nickname by personally leading bayonet charges in North Africa and Sicily. He was not a man who respected bureaucratic procedure when soldiers' lives were at stake. Campbell summoned Bowman the next morning. "Mr. Bowman, Lieutenant Fraser tells me you've invented an illegal trigger modification." "Yes, sir." "Show me." June 18th, 1944. Conference room, 51st Highland Division Headquarters, Aldershot. The room contains 12 men, Lieutenant Colonel Campbell, 3 sniper instructors, 2 armorers from the Small Arms School at Hythe, a major from the War Office Procurement Division, and 5 veteran snipers recently rotated back from Normandy. Harold Bowman stands at the head of the table, feeling distinctly out of place in his civilian clothes surrounded by military uniforms. Campbell speaks first. "Gentlemen, Mr. Bowman claims he can improve Lee-Enfield accuracy by 65% with a simple trigger modification. I've seen his demonstration. I want this evaluated properly before we dismiss it." Major Thornton from the War Office interrupts. "Colonel Campbell, with respect, we've been through this before. Civilian gunsmiths regularly approach the War Office with improvements to service rifles. The Small Arms School has evaluated hundreds of these proposals. None have been adopted because they compromise reliability or safety." One of the Hythe armorers, Warrant Officer Davies, nods. "Sir, I've examined Mr. Bowman's modification. It increases the trigger engagement angle beyond specification. This could lead to sear wear and eventual trigger failure. In combat conditions, mud, sand, extreme cold, this modification could cause malfunctions." Bowman speaks quietly. "Have you tested it?" "I don't need to test it," Davies replies. "I've been working on Lee-Enfields for 18 years. I understand the mechanics." "But have you tested it?" Bowman repeats. Davies' face reddens. "Mr. Bowman, I don't think you understand military requirements. This isn't about shooting tight groups at a civilian range. This is about rifles that must function in the worst conditions imaginable. Your modification might work perfectly in your clean workshop. In a muddy trench in Normandy, it could get a soldier killed." The room erupts. 3 men start talking at once. One of the veteran snipers, Sergeant William Reed, stands up. "With respect, sir," Reed addresses Davies, "I was in Normandy last week. I watched Jerry snipers hit targets on their first shot at ranges where we needed 3 attempts. I lost 2 men from my section because our second shots gave away our positions. If this modification works, if it actually works, We need it. Now. Major Thornton shakes his head. Sergeant, I understand your frustration, but we cannot authorize field modifications to service rifles based on one civilian's workshop testing. The proper procedure is to submit this to the Small Arms School for comprehensive evaluation. That process takes 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months? Reed's voice rises. Sir, men are dying now. Today. While we're sitting here talking about proper procedure. Campbell raises his hand for silence. Major Thornton, I appreciate the War Office's position, but I'm going to propose something irregular. Mr. Bowman, how many triggers can you modify per week? Working full-time? Perhaps 50. Here's what I want. Mr. Bowman will modify 50 Lee-Enfield sniper rifles under supervision of our armorers. We'll conduct comprehensive testing. Accuracy, reliability, cold weather, mud immersion, drop tests, everything. If the modification passes all tests, I'm sending those 50 rifles to Normandy with my next sniper rotation. If they perform as promised, we'll request full authorization from the War Office. Major Thornton stands. Colonel Campbell, you cannot authorize this. Deploying unauthorized rifle modifications violates 3 separate regulations. If one of these rifles malfunctions and causes a casualty, you'll face a board of inquiry. Campbell looks at Thornton steadily. Major, I've been facing boards of inquiry since North Africa. Add one more to the list, but I'm not sending my snipers back to Normandy with inferior equipment while we wait for bureaucrats to schedule meetings. CTA number 1. Before we see how these forbidden triggers performed in combat, I need to ask for your support. Creating these deeply researched military history documentaries takes hundreds of hours of research and production. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I am, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It genuinely helps us continue making these detailed historical investigations. Now let's see what happened when these modified rifles reached the battlefield. The testing began the next day. For 2 weeks, Bowman worked 16-hour days in a workshop at Aldershot, modifying Lee-Enfield triggers under the skeptical supervision of military armorers. Each modified rifle underwent rigorous testing. Accuracy testing. Modified rifles average 1.2-inch groups at 200 yards with military ball ammunition. Standard rifles averaged 2.4-inch groups. The improvement was consistent across all 50 rifles. Reliability testing. Each rifle fired 500 rounds without cleaning. 0 malfunctions. The armorers grudgingly admitted surprise. Environmental testing. Rifles were submerged in mud, frozen overnight, heated to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, then fired. All functioned normally. Drop testing. Rifles were dropped from 6 feet onto concrete. None fired accidentally. All functioned normally afterward. Trigger pull weight. Modified triggers averaged 2.8 pounds with 0 creep. Safety engagement remained within specification. By July 3, 1944, even Warrant Officer Davies had to admit the modification worked. I don't understand it, he told Campbell. By every principle I know, this shouldn't be reliable, but the testing doesn't lie. On July 5th, 50 modified Lee-Enfield sniper rifles were issued to the 51st Highland Division's sniper sections deploying to Normandy. Each rifle had HB discreetly stamped on the trigger guard, Harold Bowman's initials. Major Thornton filed an official protest with the War Office. Campbell ignored it. The modified rifles reached Normandy on July 8, 1944. July 12, 1944, near Escaut-sur-Seulles, Normandy. Sergeant William Reed lies in a shallow scrape behind a hedgerow, his modified Lee-Enfield resting on a small sandbag. Through his scope, he observes a German observation post 520 yards distant, a sandbagged position in the upper floor of a partially destroyed farmhouse. Reed has been watching this position for 3 hours. He's identified 2 German soldiers, a spotter with binoculars, and a sniper with a Kar98k. They've been directing German mortar fire onto British positions. In the past hour, that mortar fire has killed 4 men from Reed's battalion. The German sniper moves into view, scanning the British lines through his scope. Reed's crosshairs settle on the man's chest. His finger finds the trigger. The difference is immediate. The modified trigger breaks cleanly at 2.8 pounds with no creep, no stacking, no over-travel. Reed doesn't anticipate the shot breaking. He controls it precisely. The rifle fires. Through the scope, Reed watches the German sniper collapse backward. 5 seconds later, the spotter appears, trying to reach his fallen comrade. Reed's second shot drops him before he can retreat. Reed's after-action report notes, first shot hit at 520 yards. Second shot hit at 525 yards. Both kills confirmed. Modified trigger performed exactly as demonstrated in training. This is the first time I've achieved first shot kills at this range. The reports from other snipers echoed Reed's experience. By July 20th, the 51st Highland Division's sniper sections had filed 43 after-action reports mentioning the modified triggers. The statistics were striking. Before modification, June 6th, July 7th. Average shots per kill, 2.8. First shot hit probability at 400 plus yards, 38%. Sniper section casualties, 27 killed or wounded. Confirmed kills, 94. After modification, July 8th, July 31. Average shots per kill, 1.4. First shot hit probability at 400 plus yards, 76%. Sniper section casualties, 11 killed or wounded. Confirmed kills, 187. The German response was documented in captured intelligence reports. A July 25th situation report from the 12th SS Panzer Division noted, enemy sniper effectiveness has increased markedly in recent weeks. British snipers are achieving first-shot kills at ranges previously considered difficult. Recommend increased caution in observation post placement. A captured German sniper, Obergefreiter Klaus Richter of the 21st Panzer Division, was interrogated on July 28th. When asked about British sniper effectiveness, he stated, "Something changed in mid-July. Before, we could usually survive the British sniper's first shot and relocate. After mid-July, the first shot was almost always fatal. We began to fear the British snipers as much as they feared us." The story of how these forbidden triggers went from banned modification to official adoption is incredible. But first, if you're enjoying this deep dive into forgotten military innovation, please take a second to like this video. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this story to more history enthusiasts. Also, check out our Patreon, where supporters get early access to scripts and behind-the-scenes research materials. Link in the description. Now, let's see how the British military establishment finally had to admit they were wrong. August 15th, 1944, near Falaise, France. The Falaise Pocket, where Allied forces were encircling and destroying German Army Group B, became the proving ground for Bowman's modification. British and Canadian sniper sections equipped with modified Lee-Enfields achieved unprecedented success against German forces trying to escape the pocket. Sergeant James "Jimmy" Milne of the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division recorded one of the most remarkable engagements. On August 16th, Milne and his spotter occupied a position overlooking a road junction near Troon. Over 6 hours, they engaged German soldiers attempting to retreat through the junction. Milne's after-action report documented 23 confirmed kills at ranges between 300 and 600 yards. He fired 28 shots, an 82% hit rate. His report noted, "The modified trigger allowed me to take shots I would never have attempted with a standard Lee-Enfield. At 500 plus yards, the ability to break the shot cleanly without disturbing aim made previously difficult shots routine." By late August 1944, word of the modified triggers had spread through British and Canadian sniper sections. Snipers who had not received modified rifles were requesting them. Some were attempting to modify, their own triggers based on descriptions from other snipers, a dangerous practice that resulted in several malfunctions. The War Office could no longer ignore the evidence. On September 3, 1944, Major General Charles Keatley, commanding the 6th Armored Division, sent a formal request to the War Office. Request immediate authorization and production of Bowman trigger modification for all Lee-Enfield sniper rifles. Field testing in Normandy campaign demonstrates significant improvement in sniper effectiveness with no reliability issues. Current supply of modified rifles insufficient to meet demand. The Small Arms School at Hythe was ordered to conduct official evaluation. By this point, modified rifles had fired over 50,000 rounds in combat with 0 trigger-related malfunctions. The testing was a formality. On October 12, 1944, the War Office authorized the Bowman trigger modification for production. Harold Bowman was contracted to train military armorers in the modification procedure. By December 1944, over 3,000 Lee-Enfield sniper rifles had been modified. The final combat statistics from the Northwest Europe campaign told the story. British and Canadian sniper sections equipped with modified Lee-Enfields achieved 68% reduction in sniper casualties compared to June-July 1944, 94% increase in confirmed kills per sniper section. First shot, hit probability at 400-plus yards increased from 38% to 81%. Average engagement range increased from 380 yards to 485 yards. An estimated 340 British and Canadian snipers survived engagements they likely would not have survived with standard triggers. These men returned home to families, had children, built lives. Their survival was directly attributable to a simple modification that cost 3 shillings per rifle. Harold Bowman never sought recognition for his contribution. When the War Office offered to pay him for training military armorers, he refused payment beyond his actual expenses. "I didn't do this for money," he told Lieutenant Colonel Campbell. "I did it because men were dying." After the war, Bowman returned to his gunsmith shop in Portsmouth. He rarely spoke about his wartime contribution. When customers asked about the framed letter on his workshop wall, a personal thank you from Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, he would change the subject. In 1947, a group of veterans from the 51st Highland Division visited Bowman's shop. Sergeant William Reed, who had survived the war and returned to Scotland, spoke for the group. "Mr. Bowman, we wanted to come here and tell you something. Because of what you did, because of those triggers, some of us came home who wouldn't have otherwise. We have children now. We have lives. That's because of you." Bowman reportedly became emotional and had to step into his back workshop to compose himself. The Bowman trigger modification remained standard on British sniper rifles through the end of World War II. Over 8,000 Outshoot Lee-Enfield sniper rifles were modified before VE Day. The modification was so successful that when the British Army adopted the L42A1 sniper rifle in the 1970s, itself a modified Lee-Enfield, the trigger design incorporated Bowman's geometric principles. Modern military sniper rifles from the Accuracy International Arctic Warfare to the Barrett M82 used trigger designs based on the same principle Bowman discovered in his Portsmouth workshop, increasing the engagement angle between trigger and sear to reduce creep while maintaining safety. Harold Bowman died in 1968 at age 76. His obituary in the Portsmouth Evening News made no mention of his wartime contribution. It described him as a respected local gunsmith and devoted family man. But in the archives of the Imperial War Museum, there's a file containing 127 letters written by British and Canadian snipers to Harold Bowman between 1945 and 1968. They tell the real story. Letters from men thanking him for their lives. Letters from wives thanking him for their husband's return. Letters from children who existed because their fathers survived. One letter from a former sniper named Thomas Henderson, dated 1952, reads, "Dear Mr. Bowman, my daughter was born last week. I named her Hope, because that's what you gave us in Normandy. Hope that we might actually survive. I wanted you to know that every time I look at her, I think about that trigger modification. Such a small thing, such an enormous difference. Thank you." The lesson of Harold Bowman's story isn't about trigger modifications or rifle mechanics. It's about the power of individual initiative against institutional resistance. It's about the courage to challenge expert consensus when the evidence demands it. And it's about the profound impact one person can have when they refuse to accept that nothing can be done. In the summer of 1944, the British military establishment declared that Lee-Enfield triggers could not be improved without compromising reliability. Harold Bowman, a civilian gunsmith with no credentials and no authority, proved them wrong with 3 shillings worth of parts and 45 minutes of work. And because he did, hundreds of men came home,